Hello and welcome to Super Great Kids Stories. Wise tales from storytellers around the world who will make you laugh and sometimes cry. Recommended for ages 5 to 105. I'm Kim and I love stories. Hello, Super Great Kids. How are you? Did you have a good week? Have you told any stories yet this summer? You could start by telling your teddies or even your pets. They're very good listeners and they don't mind if you forget what comes next. We're telling water-themed stories this month to keep us all cool. We have a well-loved Japanese folktale today. It's set by the sea with an underwater dragon palace and a princess and a magic box. It's told by Masako Carey, a Japanese storyteller living in Northern Ireland. It's a beautiful story, but it does have a slightly sad ending. Just before we hear from Masako, here's a little question for you. If you were telling your version of a story on our podcast, which story do you think you'd have a go at telling? Would it be a fairy tale like Stick Woman? Or a trickster story like A Nancy and the Hot Pepper Soup? Or would it be a How and Why story like How the Elephant Got Its Trunk? Have a little think about that while we have a quick word with the grown-ups. Ready? Off you go. Hello, Super Great Kids, I'm back. Did you decide which story you'd retell? Maybe you could have a go this week at starting to tell your story. Think of an opening like mouth open, story jump out, and then think of the opening bit which would introduce the main character and the problem. I often try out stories on my dog Pip when I'm learning how to tell them. She's very happy to sit and listen. Well, actually, she quite often falls asleep, but I don't mind because it's nice to fall asleep listening to the voice of someone who cares about you. Now, it's time to hear our water story from Japan. So, let's give a very warm welcome to Masako Carey.
Hello, Super Great Kids. My name is Masako Carey from Japan, and today I would like to share with you a classical Japanese story. And do you remember Japanese story always start with the word mukashi mukashi? So can you help me start together? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Mukashi mukashi. Long time ago, there was a young man. His name was Urashima Taro. Taro was his name. He lived right beside the ocean. His job was a fisherman. So one morning, he held his rod on his shoulder and walked on the beach to his boat. And as he did so, he noticed some children were gathering around. And he got curious. He went over and looked in. Kochimukeo, look this way. Come on. The children, they were poking and shoving a little turtle. Taro went over and looked. And the little children, they were poking the little turtle with a stick and pulling its leg and turning it upside down, doing all sorts of mean things to the little creature. Kora! You should not be bullying little creatures. That is not all right, Taro shouted. Ah! The children scattered away. Kind Taro, he bent down and gently picked up this little turtle, and he took it to the water and let it swim away. Don't get caught again. He waved at it. A few days later, as usual, Taro was walking to his boat and he encountered a turtle again. But this time, it was huge. And I mean humongous. It was so big. And it spoke to him. Hello, Mr. Taro. Thank you so much for saving my boy. Our master would like to thank you. Please come with me to the underwater world. Underwater world? Oh, Taro was curious. He agreed and jumped onto the back of this huge turtle, and together they went into the water. You know, when you go into the water, can you see things clearly? No, but Taro was able to see everything very clear. And more so, when you go into the water, can you breathe? No, but Taro was able to breathe no problem. And he looked around the ocean, and when he looked up, the surface of the ocean was shining bright like diamonds. And then he looked down and there was a forest of coral, bright yellow, red, orange, green. And then he could see some fish going in and out. You know, the ones with the red and orange stripes. What do you call? Ah, yes, clownfish. And then on the other side, he could see some strange creature. There was this big one with red and had big scissors and walking sideways. What do you call them? Yes, crabs. And then far away he could see bright blue little fish swimming together, making different shape like bowl and ribbons and all sorts. Oh, the under the sea was beautiful. And soon they came to the magnificent Ryugu Castle, the dragon castle. And there was a person waiting upon him. My name is Otohime, Princess Oto. Thank you so much for saving my turtle. Please stay here and enjoy yourself as long as you wish. And the banquet, a big party was held for Taro. Oh, the food and drink was so tasty. And you know, the squid dance was funny. And you know, fish called flounder, they're flat fish, and they were dancing up and down. Oh, Taro was having a wonderful time. And time passed. 3 years passed in no time. But one day, Taro thought of his parents. And the seed was planted inside his head, and he needed to go back home. And Princess Oto, who was fond of Taro, didn't want him to go, but she could not change his mind. So she instead gave Taro a tamatebako, which is a decorative box with a string on. And she said, hold on to this box, and then you can come back to Ryugu Castle. But no matter what, do not open this box in a human world. Taro agreed, took the box, and hopped on to the same turtle and went back to the human world. He went to the village, and it looked different. The building looked different. What people were wearing were different, and he didn't recognize anyone. And he went back to where he lived, but there was no house. It was just ruin. Grass was growing, and then the old man with a stick walked by, And Taro stopped him and said, "Excuse me, do you know what happened to this house?" And the old man said, As long as I can remember, no one lived in it." Puzzled, Taro went to a graveyard. And there he found his mother's grave and father's grave and Taro's grave. But the strange thing was, his grave looked really old. There were moss growing. The name was hard to read. And Taro realized the time he spent under the sea was 3 years. It was only 3 years. But in human world, 300 years has passed. Taro walked to the beach. Because he was confused, he wasn't thinking straight. He opened up the box and a white smog came out from it and covered Taro from head to toe. Then his hair turned gray and his face was covered in wrinkles. He got a long gray beard. Taro turned into an old man. Some says he turned into ashes, but some says he gained an eternal life and still live in the area where he used to live, longing for his old life and Ryukyu Castle in the underwater world where his beloved Princess Otto is. Oshimai, the end.
Oh, thank you so much, Masako, for sharing that story. It's a little bit sad at the end, isn't it? Do you think that Taro maybe gets back to his princess who's waiting for him under the sea? Or do you think he does turn to ashes? Some versions of that story have Taro turning into a stork and flying away over the sea. So here's my question. If you were telling that story, how would you end it? Do send us a picture of Taro the fisherman, maybe sitting with the princess surrounded by crabs and fish, or maybe even riding into the water on the back of the turtle. The box part in that story reminds me a little bit of a Greek legend called Pandora's Box. It's another of those stories where a character is told not to do something, and then they do it, and then they regret it. Well, now it's time to dig deep into my bag of happies and say hello to some owlets who've recently hopped into our nest. Let's begin in Brooklyn in New York and say hello to owlets Jake, who is 6, and Emma, who is 3. Jake's favourite story is The Rainbird and the Japanese story Momotaro or Peach Boy. Emma's favourite story is The Ghost of the Bloody Finger. They love listening with their grown-ups, Cameron and Dan, whenever they're travelling together in the car. And staying in New York State, let's flap up to the Finger Lakes to say hello to Poppy, who is 7. Poppy just became a big sister to Birdie. Lucky Birdie having you for a big sister, Poppy. Hope she's sleeping well at night. That's the trouble with babies. They don't all know how to sleep when they first arrive. They do get it eventually, though. Poppy's favourite story is Baba Yaga, the Russian witch, and she loves to draw while listening to all the stories. Let's flip-flap-fly down to Florida next, to Springfield in Jacksonville, to say hello to Kalel, who became an owlet for his 6½ birthday. The hairy toe is one of his favourite stories because his mum finds it really yucky. He also likes The Monster in the Maze, The Laughing Prince and The Griffin. Oh, and he and his mum enjoy the scary stories together too. Now, let's say hello to Galushia, who is soon to turn 5 and has been listening to the show since he was 3. He listens with his little brother August, who is 2. Galushia and August are both members of the Eyak tribe in Cordova in Alaska in the US. The first story they listened to was The Boy Who Lived with Bears. And now they love all the stories, especially the scary ones like Molly and the Skeleton. Galushia will be getting a Super Great Scary Stories t-shirt for his birthday. Lovely, Galushia. His grown-ups say, "Thanks for being with us every day. You all feel like family." Oh, that's lovely to hear. Thank you very much. And to superfan Rami, who has recently become an owlet. And let's fly across to Charlottesville in Virginia in the US to greet owlets, Eloise, who is 6, who loves Kia and the purple fish, and Charlie, who is 8, who loves Molly and the skeleton, and Grace, who is 10 and loves Nora and the ackee fruit. Welcome to the club, all of you. I wonder if any of you've tried telling someone a story this summer. And let's head up to Plymouth in Massachusetts in the US next to say hello to big fans Aaliyah, who is 7, and Aubrey, who is 3. Aaliyah's favourite story is Water Mama, and Aubrey loves all stories about dragons. Me too, Aubrey. And across the pond to the UK now to Manningtree in Essex to say hello to new owlets, Elsie, who is 7, and Felix, who is 4. They love listening to the stories while travelling in the car. Elsie became an owlet for her 7th birthday, and she was very excited to read her first owlet letter. Their favourite stories are Hey Ho, told by Daniel Morden, and The Ghost of the Bloody Finger, told by Tien and Duyeb. And let's head up to Canada next, to Winnipeg in Manitoba, to say hello to story fan Graham, who is 6. Graham loves colouring while listening to the stories. His favourite stories are Stick Woman and The Ghost of the Bloody Finger and The Raven Who Brought Light to the World. And he sent in a lovely colouring of Stick Woman from our Super Great Kids Stories colouring book. Thanks, Graham. I love Stick Woman too, especially that fun little rhyme. And that's all our hoot-outs for this week. More next week. Oh, and more thanks from my bag of happies. 2 of you put wags in my tail this week for your reviews on Apple Podcasts. So, a hippy-happy thank you to Laura Teaches Music's stay-at-home mum, who gave a very thoughtful review. And 11-year-old Leah from Pennsylvania, who listens with her siblings Hannah, who is 8, and Benny and Vinny, who are 3, and Sammy, who is 2. Glad you're all enjoying the stories, Leah. That's it for Owlet Hellos this week. More welcomes next week. And thanks to all of you who've bought t-shirts from our website shop. Do send photos. We love seeing you in your super great tees. And you've all been very busy this summer sending in pictures to our Facebook page. It's so hard to choose, but our Pick of the Week picture this week goes to Megan, who is 8 and lives in West Bromwich in the West Midlands here in the UK for her picture of Thor and the Stone Giant. I love the way you've drawn the stone giant, covered in little pebbles, watching on in amazement as Thor wins the fishing competition by catching that gigantic world serpent. Yikes! No wonder the fish are swimming away as fast as they can. Thank you for sharing your picture, Megan. Go to facebook.com/supergreatkidsstories to see that brilliant picture and many, many more. And thanks very much to all of you owlets who continue to support our podcast. If you'd like to support us on Apple Podcasts or on Patreon, we'll say hello to you on the programme. You can hear our stories advert-free, and you'll get access to our Super Great Kids Stories Express. Great for long journeys listening to back-to-back stories. And you'll have access to over 40 bonus stories and at least 24 super great scary stories. Ooh, 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 ooh. Happy holidays! This podcast was produced at Wardle Studios in fabulous Fitzrovia in London.